Welcome back, everybody. I know it's been a while since I've done an update on my truck. I'm gonna try to do this video on my phone. I don't have any of my equipment charged, and figure this is a good time to do it. And so let's give this a shot. Now, I'd like to apologize. It's been a while since I've given an update, but we were going through the holiday season. I work in the transportation business, so I was pretty busy. Of course, I had to get sick and injured my back, so progress has been slow. And I've had a few people ask me about updates on the truck, and they're working on similar projects, and they wanted to see how things are going along with mine so they can get ideas for theirs. So anyhow, I'll show you what I've done, and then I'll also show you things to look out for and kind of plan for your project. Um, that way you can avoid any issues and have to spend money that you didn't need to, or have to go backwards in your project before you advance. But here we go. All right, guys, here we are. Sorry again about not updating as much as I could. I'm trying to remember where I left off. I believe I was in the process of putting the engine in, fabbing up some motor mounts, and doing the brakes. The brakes were kind of a pain in the ass for me because I'm bad with brakes. I had leaks everywhere, so I ended up going with stainless hard tube and these AN tube fittings. They seem to work out the best for me, and for stainless tubing, that's kind of your only route. You can't double flare them. You'll end up cracking the tubing. And what I mean by double flaring is traditionally you run like a 45-degree double flare tool that you'd pick up at Pet Boys or AutoZone. When you run the tube nuts in the single flare, you have to run a 37-degree tool, which is kind of a specialty item. You have to either buy one from a speed shop or look on eBay. That's what I did, because they're pretty expensive, and I ended up finding a really nice tool for like a third of the price. But anyhow, got the brakes done. There's no leaks, so that's great. And then I got the brakes done before I got the engine figured out, because the brake lines run inside the frame. You don't want to have to mess around working around the engine. So the way I figured out where I wanted my engine is basically as low as possible, where I'll have plenty of clearance, and then as far back to the firewall. I try to get it under this shelf here. See how it angles back, to move the engine back as far as I could. However, I'm running these deep sump pans on my transmission and motor, and that's because they're from a previous project. Granted, if you had just a traditional pan, you could probably get the engine a little bit lower and further back. But another issue was I'm using the stock transmission crossmember, just because I wanted to try to maintain that factory look for whatever dumb reason I wanted. But anyways, it was kind of a blessing in disguise because of the relationship of the exhaust and your steering. Again, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but one of the problems you can come across when you're introducing a suspension swap or fabricating new suspension is you always have to keep in mind you're always going to have to worry about your steering and your exhaust, how they interfere with each other. So knowing this from previous projects, I knew how I was going to go about with the steering, and it would leave me with whatever options for my exhaust manifolds. So for this, I'll go over the steering first real quick. And the reason why it's also a bigger problem with these Jaguar front ends is the rack is actually behind the cross member. You can see it there. So you run out of real estate really quick. So it limits your options even more. Anyhow, what I did is I cut the shaft, not the shaft, but the column right at the firewall, and I left probably another inch of the shaft, and I made a bushing and blocked off the shaft with a collar to keep the shaft from moving in and out. I ran the double D shafts with double D universals. This is like an intermediate shaft or U-joint to give me some extra room for the exhaust. and everything lined up. It works great. You can see down there how that's looking like. And again, so with your exhaust options, I mean, with this setup, I had maybe 4 options. I chose to go this way because these manifolds are cheap. I just want to get this thing running. You can also go with like one of those shorty truck headers. I think the collector would clear if you move the shaft out enough. Again, this last cylinder is always going to be an issue. Another option I tinkered with is making some of those fender flare or fender headers, the ones that come outside the frame. I think those would be really cool, but again, trying to tackle that fabrication is not something I really want to deal with right now. I mean, I'm already trying to snake this downpipe kind of through the steering and the engine. You can see where I'm coming up with. Pretty clean so far. You can get pre-bent tubes from Speedway, which gets you close, but I've had to mess with it a little bit to get it where I need it, because not everyone's project's gonna be the same. On the passenger side, I think it's just a matter of cutting the top maybe a couple inches, and the pre-bent tube will work right away. Let's see. As far as the engine placement, one of the reasons why you want it to move it back as close to the firewall as possible also is because you have to think about in the front, you have to make clearance for the radiator fan and the radiator. I'm going to be pretty close. I'm going to be running electric fans. I think I should clear. If not, I'll do some like smaller offset fans and maybe one pusher fan in the front if I have cooling problems. Anyhow, I think we're all caught up, but what I'm working on now is, as you can see, I'm trying to finish up the exhaust. I don't know where I want the tubes to run under the truck. I'm thinking they're just going to be parallel to the frame on the inside, but hanging a little lower. As long as it's not the lowest point on the truck, it should be okay. It's a little tricky to get it inside that transmission crossmember because it's pretty narrow and it's thick, but it's still an option. But I think I'm just gonna run it under. I think that'll be my best bet. Anyhow, if I know a couple of you guys have asked me questions on in the comments about your projects running similar front ends. Now you know where I'm at. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments, ask me questions, and see if I can help you out there. Be more than happy to help you with, as far as I know, I'm no expert, but just whatever my experience with this project is, hopefully I can help you out. Anyhow, be safe, and I'll try to keep these updates coming as quickly as I can. Take it easy.